Hi everybody, welcome to the channel. Stranger Things Season 4 dropped a couple of weeks back and there's 2 episodes left to go in about 2 weeks time, more from when I do this. I think it's like 2 weeks time it's coming out. Anyway, I know at the start of Season 4 they do a quick recap of everything that's gone on so far. I've watched it right from the very first season and I cannot wait for these last 2 episodes to drop. But in the meantime, I'm just going to do a quick catch-up of what's gone on in Season 1, 2, 3 and Season 4 just to lead us up to those last 2 episodes. So if you've not had a chance to catch any or you can't remember what's gone on, I know my wife, she's not been able to watch Season 3 or Season 4. I don't know why, but she can watch this, so she knows what's going on. She's up to speed with everything. So we'll do all the way up until the end of Episode 7, I think it is, of Season 4. And then there'll just be those other 2 episodes to go, and I'll do one for those hopefully when they drop in a couple of weeks time. It's going to be real quick, this just quickly going through what goes on as each season carries on. So I'll crack on with Season 1. I'll try and put time links in the bottom so you can see where each one is, but let's go. Drop us a like, subscribe, comment, all that sort of stuff, and let's crank it up to 11. It's 1983 in Hawkins in Indiana, and there's a scientist who gets attacked by some kind of creature, some guy from a lab, we don't know who he is. Meanwhile, there's 4 kids, Dustin, Lucas, Mike and Will, who are playing Dungeons and Dragons. Will gets taken by something, we don't know what it is. His mum's really angry about it and speaks to the police chief, Hopper, about it. He says he's going to do a little bit of search, but he's very reluctant about it, so will he, won't he, who really knows? Maybe he will. Meanwhile, a kid turns up at a diner. The people there don't know who she is, so they call social services. Social services do not turn up. It is instead some agents from the laboratory who kill people. The girl runs away and finds the boys who are looking for their friend Will, because they're all in the woods, so they know what's going on. Will's mum Joyce gets a phone call from who she believes is Will, and the boys take 11 home to their place, and she recognises a picture of Will, and she says she's got superpowers and she can find. Yes, she's got superpowers, and yeah, she knows who Will is. But how? She says he's in the Upside Down, and there's this monster there trying to get her. In another teenage shenanigans, Nancy and Barbara are at a party, and Nancy's there with her boyfriend Steve, who's trying to get with her. Barb's off and she gets attacked by a monster, and Will's brother Jonathan is there with a camera and ends up taking a picture of it. A little bit creepy, but who knows, that's what he's doing. At least he's got a picture. Joyce keeps getting signs of Will and keeps seeing this creature. Steve ends up finding the picture and ripping it up, but Nancy puts it back together again and realises that there is a monster which she's heard of before. Hopper ends up investigating the laboratory and finds something about some Dr. Brenner. Joyce ends up getting Christmas lights so she can speak to Will. It works really well and she can communicate, but then the Demogorgon turns up again. Bad times. They find Will's body, but it doesn't end up being Will's body. It's too dark for that sort of stuff this early on in the series. It ends up just being like a fake body with like stuffing inside it, so it's just a bit of fluff. That's all good. 11 uses a radio and she's able to speak to Will, and then there's an 80s montage where she will get dressed up into the 80s stuff, and she goes into the school. They use the CB radios there, the big radio, and they can get hold of him. The kids go speak to their teacher and find out about other dimensions and gateways, which is really good. Jonathan and Nancy find one of these gates in a tree, which is bad. Nancy tries to go in, Jonathan ends up saving her. The boys and Eleven get into a fight because they're trying to find Will, but Eleven's trying to protect him. She shows them what power she's got and they send somebody flying off. It's Lucas, she sends flying off. Steve and Nancy fight over how close she's getting with Jonathan. Jonathan turns up, they have a bit of a scrap, everybody's scrapping at the minute. Brilliant. There's some bullies bullying the kids, and Eleven turns up, sorts all the bullies out, which is great. Joyce and Hopper find out about Eleven's mum, and Eleven was actually called Jane. She was taken by Dr. Brenner, and experiments was done on her, and she was spying on the Russians. That's what she was used for, but she accidentally opened up this big rift into the Upside Down. There's a nice little ET scene where 11 saves the kids. Everybody ends up meeting up and they all give the same information to each other, and everybody sorts everything out. 11 then goes into like a water pool thing to go and communicate with Will. She finds that Barbie's dead. She's all in the Upside Down. She can find where Will is, which is good, and tells him he needs to look after himself and wait till they get there. Joyce and Hopper get into the Hawkins lab. They find the bad guy. Hopper says, I'll tell you where 11 is if you let me go and get Will from this upside down thing. 11 turns up, she starts going and like making everybody's eyes bleed and get rid of him. The bad guy does some brain and ends up like getting attacked by a Demogorgon. Will 11 saves everybody but ends up killing herself because she kills the Demogorgon, or does she? Will's alright, so that's all good. Or is it? Cut to like a month later, Will's like being sick of something from the upside down, but who knows? Who knows what's going on? Season 2 is about a year later, everything else is just going normal, everybody's just doing normal kid stuff to prepare for Halloween. There's a new girl that turns up, her name is Max, we like Max. She says we must stop spying on them, which you've just seen. Joyce has a boyfriend, he's called Bob, he's from The Lord of the Rings, we all know Bob. Nothing's normal though, because Hopper's found something going on with some pumpkins, they're all rotting. There's a journalist called Murray who believes that 11 is a Russian spy. Barb's parents think that she's gone missing, so they're trying to find her. However, Will's still having some kind of like PTSD on what's going on. 11's still alive that we find. Woohoo! She's living with Hopper, so Hopper's found her and he's taking her in as kind of like his daughter. We then for some kind of flashbacks that 11 got out of the upside down and then just ran away. And he found her. Nancy wants to tell Barb's parents exactly what's going on with Barb and that she's dead, but Steve says it's a bad idea. She gets in a drug fight with Steve and they end up falling out, splitting out. The new girl's stepbrother is a bit of an idiot, he's a bit of a bellend. But Max befriends the guys and they'll get on, and we find out that Will's having like real bad flashbacks and he sees a mind flayer and he ends up telling Mike about it. Dustin finds a tiny little creature in his trash can, which is the thing that Will threw up through the end of the last series. He ends up calling it Darth for some reason, probably got Darth Vader. We find out exactly how Hopper ended up getting with 11 and saying that he's going to look after her as long as she stayed like secret. Hopper's investigating the pumpkin distill, and 11 sneaks out and sees that Mike is getting on really well with Max and she doesn't like it. Blew it jealous with her, chips off the skateboard, as you do when you're kids. Bob's trying to get Will to like face up to his face and everything because he doesn't realise that he's like stuff's going on with the Demogorgon, and he ends up getting possessed with it. It's not the Demogorgon, it's the mind flayer. Yeah, so he ends up really possessed, but they all find him and they're checking him up and trying to find out what's going on with him. He goes back to the house, but it's all of a sudden it's really cold, he doesn't really like it, he starts doing loads of weird drawings. It ends up being like a massive kind of like map of stuff. Nancy and Jonathan are still trying to find out what's going on with Barbara. They end up going to the lab and finding out that Barb actually died when they speak to the guy who's in charge there. Lucas says that he's got a bit of a crush on Max, but Hopper and 11 get to an argument over her going out and everything. She explodes the place. Dusty's pet Dart is getting a little bit bigger and ends up eating the cat. That is not good. We don't eat cats. Hopper goes and finds a tunnel under the pumpkin patch and goes in there, but it's all like toxic and all that sort of stuff, and he's like, loses his hat, it starts falling off. Bob comes over and finds out that all these like vines and stuff that Will's been drawing are actually a map of Hawkins, and he's like, oh yeah, of course it is, yeah I know, it's in Lord of the Rings. Jonathan and Nancy visit Murray and he tries to convince them to let the story out about what's going on with Barb and everything. Steve and Dustin get together and Lucas tells Max everything that's gone on about 11 and all the stuff. 11 tracks down her mother who she can speak to telepathically, which is really good. Everybody ends up finding Hopper, who nearly died, but then some agents turn up and like set everywhere on fire. Will's doing not very well because everything got set on fire and he's kind of connected to it. He ends up in hospital and find out that there's destroying the tunnels will kill Will. Steve, Dustin, Lucas and Max all group up together in like a car, like a scrapyard, and all the dogs attack. Will tells everybody at the lab about a place that he can't see in his mind. They sent some people there to go and sort it out, but it ends up in a trap and all the dogs come and start getting them, which just saves everybody else. Then it just ends up being a single episode on 11 and her backstory, where she ends up like meeting up with like a sister, but not really a sister, other people who've got similar sort of powers, and they want to take it all down and everything, and she's like, yeah, let's go do that. But then when it comes to like killing somebody, she's like, I don't really want to kill him, I'm not that sort of person. And I'm like, all right, Ed. And she's like, well, I'm gonna go then. And she ends up pegging it back over to Robin Hawkins because she sees some like images of Mike, sorry. Everything in the lab is going wrong, in the hospital's going wrong. There's like dogs about all over the place. Will's still not real well. They all try to escape from there. Bob sacrifices himself, poor old Bob. Jonathan and Nancy come over and rescue everybody. All the kids get together and talk about getting rid of the mind flayer, which is what the big monster's called that's been like possessing Will. Through Morse code, Will lets everybody know that he's still in Will's body, he's still there. 11 turns up and like tries to like come around and save everybody. She's like, because everybody's going to die. She's going to go off and close the gate with Hopper. Everybody else is going to try and really heat Will up so that all the stuff comes out of him, because the mind flayer doesn't like that. It all seems to work. Billy turns up, he's Max's brother, and starts messing about with stuff and making everything almost go wrong, but then they end up fixing the situation. 11 ends up killing the thing. Will comes out the thing. They all go to a party at the end and they all kiss, but then we see that the mind flayer is still there. On with season 3, it's a year later and there's a new mall in Hawkins. Hurrah! 11 and Mike are dating. Hopper's not very happy with it. Max and Lucas are dating, and and Nancy and Jonathan are all dating. Everybody's dating. Even Dustin's got a girlfriend. She lives somewhere else. We'll see her later. Billy's still got himself like a bit of romance going on, that kind of graduate kind of role, but that doesn't go well for him. He ends up crashing his car and he gets pulled into a mill by a monster. He comes out, but there's something up with him and he ends up like kidnapping a lifeguard that he works with or that he sees. Nancy and Jonathan are looking at some rats where there's something wrong with those, and 11 and Max start bonding and going out. 11 ends up breaking up with Mike, I can't remember why. Hopper asks Joyce out on a date, but something goes wrong with magnets and so she doesn't make it. Dustin and Steve end up getting back together. He now works with Robin in a shop, and they find out that there's some kind of Russian conspiracy going on. 11 does some psychic stuff and finds out that something's wrong with Billy. Nancy and Jonathan find out that the problem with the rats is like all over the place. Will gets annoyed because nobody wants to do D&D anymore because everybody's grown up with girls. Robin finds out that the code that they found is something to do with Russian soldiers. Joyce says to Hopper about something with the magnets, saying it all comes from the lab, so he gets to check it out and he gets attacked. Max and 11 find Billy at Heather's house. Everything seems fine, but then all of a sudden it's not fine and they're like possessed. Will figures out something wrong and knows that the Mind Flayer is back. Bad times. Hopper gets the mayor to admit that the store is a Russian front. Erica gets recruited, who's Lucas's sister, to join the group by Dustin. They all become trapped in the mall as they're investigating what's going on. Jonathan and Nancy get fired from the newspaper they were working at. We didn't even talk about that, but all to do with the rats. The Mind Flayer's got a hold on Billy, so they capture him and they try and heat him up, which he doesn't like, but he ends up escaping that because they knew that heat worked in the last series. But anyway, he gets out of that. 11 sorts him out. Billy goes back to the mill and finds out there's loads of possessed people there. Hopper and Joyce find a hidden lab, which is scooped up by the Russians, but they get attacked again. They escape, but take a Russian hostage with them, Alexei I think his name is, and take him to go and see our old mate Murray, because he can speak Russian. The guys trapped in the mall end up finding a big machine that's trying to make a hole into the upside down. The rest of the kids meet up and figure out that because of all the rat things that are going on, the Mind Flayer is possessing more and more people. They end up going to the hospital to go see what's going on, but loads of people there have been possessed. They're all big taken over by the Mind Flayer, who turns all goop and all that, and turns into a big monster that starts attacking everybody. 11 then does the attack on the monster and gets rid of it. Doesn't quite kill it though because it scoops back away to the mill. Alexei tells everybody that the Russians attempted to open a portal into the Upside Down. 11 uses her powers to see what's going on with Billy and finds out all about his past and everything. He says that the Mind Flayer wants to kill 11 because she attacked him in the end of the last one. There's now one giant, massive Mind Flayer. It catches hold of 11, attacks her. Hopper and Joyce, Alexei and Murray get back to Hawkins. They see the mayor, who tells the Russians. Alexei gets killed, which is bad because we kind of liked Alexei. Everybody else finds out that the Russians are after the kids. They go to the mall. 11 gets a little bit of Mind Flayer of a leg, which she was injured with before, but she loses her powers. Hopper and Joyce and Murray turn up. They find a machine that's there making a thing to the Upside Down. The kids fight the Mind Flayer. Billy gets saved. He sacrifices himself though, which is a horrible thing to do. Joyce and Hopper get to the machine. They're going to blow it up, but there's a guy there trying to kill him. They blow up the machine, but Hopper gets stuck there. He ends up getting disintegrated. What does he? In the whole machine. But now it seems the Mind Flayer is dead. Billy's dead as well, unfortunately. Cut to a few months later, the whole place has been destroyed. Hawkins is still alright, all the families are still together. 11 hasn't got any powers. They're off to California. So 11 and Will and Will's mum and all those, Jonathan, are going to California. And that is the end of that season. Right, on with season 4. If you haven't seen season 4 already, it only came out a couple of weeks back. Go and watch that rather than watch this recap because it's such a good series. Otherwise, here we go. The season starts out with 11 in a flashback in 1979 massacring everybody in the lab except for Dr. Brenner. Then steps forward to 1986 where you see 11, who is now Jane, in a school with Will because they all moved out there at the end of the last season and she's getting bullied by this girl because everybody gets bullied at school. It's ridiculous. Joyce receives a small package through the mail which it's got Enzo written on it, which is Russian, which makes her believe that Hopper is still alive. Hurrah! Max has kind of distanced herself from everybody else because she's still getting over what went on with her brother and she's thinking about that all the time. Max is in counselling to deal with all the things that have gone on with Billy and all of her past lives, but she's not really letting much on with it. There's a cheerleader called Chrissy who keeps having visions or something, but we don't know what it is. She breaks down in the toilet and Max is there and hears what's going on. The cheerleader then goes and meets up with Eddie, who's a D&D player. He does all the drugs and stuff around school. He's with the rest of the guys they're hanging out with because they all play D&D together. So Chrissy goes and meets up with him to get some drugs because of the visions and images that she's been having. So he goes to sort her out. There's a basketball game which Lucas is part of, and he ends up scoring like the winning net. I don't know what it's called. The winning basket. He ends up scoring that, but half of his mates aren't there because D&D night. Chrissy goes round to Eddie's place to get the drugs, and Max notices because she lives in the trailer park as well. They both live in the trailer park. And so she thinks it's kind of weird because she's like a cheerleader and he's like the D&D guy. Why are they hanging out? Eddie's off finding the drugs, and Chrissy goes into this kind of like trance and gets possessed by this being who says it's time for her to die and all that sort of stuff. Chrissy in the real world, because she's in a trance, she's seen this monster in like the upside down world, but in the real world she starts floating up, and like Eddie's like, what the hell's going on? The next day the police notice that she's dead, all like crumpled up and like and all that, but Eddie's gone. So having seen Chrissy's body, Max gets hold of Dustin and Robin and lets them know that exactly what she thought happened. They then figure out that whatever killed Chrissy must be a powerful creature like Vecna. I can't remember if I mentioned Vecna already, but Vecna's a D&D thing. Must have mentioned Vecna. Anyway, that's what they think it is. At the same time, we see Nancy and Fred, who works at the newspaper place. They go off to find the trailer where Chrissy was killed at, because Max lived near that. So they go to the trailer to speak to Eddie's dad and try and find out some more information about what happened. Meanwhile, Fred, who's the new guy, he's having some kind of like flashbacks, a bit like what like Chrissy had earlier on, so something might be wrong with him. He starts hearing the clock and everything. While Nancy's interviewing his dad, Fred goes off into the woods, sees Vecna, or who we now know as Vecna, and he gets killed as well, the same way Chrissy did, like dead, he's gone. Then we cut to Mike, who's turned back up with everybody else. He's met up with Eleven and Will and Jonathan, and Jonathan's mate, the guy whose mate's kind of a total target because he's gone to pick them all up. They all end up going skating. Eleven tells Mike that she's having a really great time, she's got loads of friends, which we know she hasn't because she's been bullied. Everybody gets bullied in this, it's ridiculous. The school bully finds Eleven, or Jane, there and starts showing her up in front of all of her friends and doing like weird things to her and telling her that she hasn't got any friends. And Eleven doesn't like this because she's there with Mike and she wants to show off that she's got loads of friends, so Eleven gets a skate and boshes her in the head. We find out that there's a Russian guard called Dmitri who is helping Hopper in prison, so he wants to help him escape, and the Enzo guy is a guy in a plane who's going to come and help them get out once they pay the ransom. Also, while Nancy's interviewing Eddie's dad, she finds out that he thinks it's this guy called Victor Creel who did all these murders like years and years ago and has come back to start doing the murders again. Well, that's what he thinks. So she picks up on this and she's like, maybe we can roll with that. Let's look further into this. Hopper is in the middle of planning this escape with Dmitri, who's helping him escape. I think he tries to like break the stuff off his ankle, the chains of his ankle. Dmitri says to him, when the plane comes, you've got to get out there, you've got to get away from this camp first, the plane's only there to rescue you. Eleven ends up getting arrested for twatting that girl in the head with an ice skate. However, Dr. Owens turns up and says, there's loads of bad things going on in Hawkins at the minute, we think you're the person who can sort it all out. However, you haven't got any powers. We need to make sure that you get your powers back. I can take you away and help you get your powers back. Come with me if you want to live. Nancy and Robin make their way to the asylum where Victor's been held. They speak to the guy who's in charge there, and somehow they blag their way around it and they get to go and meet him. They end up visiting Victor, and it ends up being a lot like Silence of the Lambs with all the prison, walking past the prison bars and all that sort of stuff, and they end up seeing Victor, and he is played by Robert Englund, who's Freddy Krueger, which makes the whole kind of like dream kind of thing of what's going on all very prevalent and really good. They end up getting a little bit of backstory about what happened with him, and he was in a house that he moved into with his family, and he says that there was some kind of demon that was taking over and killing his family members, and he was about to die one day because everybody else had died. Then he started hearing some music, one of his favourite music tracks, and because of that he ended up like snapping out of what was going on. Meanwhile, Max is starting to have visions of the clock and everything that's going on there, because she's been going through the depression and everything and speaking to the counsellor, so she looks like she's going to be next in Vecna's targets. She's already written notes to everybody in case she dies, like to Lucas and just to everybody really, about what's going on, how she feels. She's delivered one to her mum, who doesn't end up being a mum. It's kind of like Vecna as well, and she goes to see Billy's grave to read out a note to Billy because she feels guilty about what's going on. While she's at Billy's grave, she gets taken over and possessed and ends up meeting Vecna. Vecna starts challenging her and saying that you should be with us because of the things that have gone in the past, and she's like, no, that's not going on. And then all the kids find out that playing your favourite music will give you that that break to get you out of where you are in the Upside Down or wherever you are in with Vecna. They end up playing Running Up That Hill by Kate Bush, and just watch the scene. It's amazing, brilliant, excellent. She survived anyway. I thought she was going to die. I almost turned off the whole series. If she'd have died, I don't know what I'd have done. She's my favourite character. We also find out that Yuri has double-crossed Dimitri and Hopper. So Hopper escaped, but then he's been brought back in because he's been double-crossed, and also Joyce has been double-crossed as well. Everybody's been double-crossed. It's bad times. We're back with 11, and she's been shown all of her memories from what's gone on before in the lab. She's never really known what's gone on and why the people died, which we got shown at the start of it. But now we get a retreading of everything that's gone on, and she's in a machine and she's living through her memories so she can figure out her backstory. And it just shows her when she first got there, all the other kids were picking on her because she didn't have the powers that they all had. She was like discriminated against, much like she was at high school earlier on. She was just being picked on. But there's a guy there who's helping her and saying, try and like focus on some good memories or some bad memories, some really strong memories, and they can help you with your powers and help you out to focus them. Max also ends up drawing loads of pictures from what she saw in her visions when she was with Vecna, and it ends up being a house that Nancy's seen before, which is Victor Creel's house. So it seems like Victor Creel and Vecna are all definitely linked to the same thing. Eddie, Steve, Nancy and Robin end up being pulled through a portal underneath the lake near where Eddie was hiding out, and we find out that every time Vecna's attacked he ends up leaving a portal behind, so they end up going through there, fighting off some bats and all that sort of stuff. But then they also find a way of getting back to the real world with the help of Dustin and everybody, so they start to get pulled back through into the normal world. Joyce and Murray have also found a way to attack Yuri and get rid of him, so they're still going to the prison and they're still going to try and find a way of getting Hopper out of the prison by Murray pretending to be Yuri because they've captured him. They arrive at the prison, all this sort of stuff works well, and then they see that Hopper and Dimitri are going to have to fight a Demogorgon in order to prove their worth. Well, not to prove their worth, but in order to get out, because the Russians were just getting bodies and feeding them to the Demogorgon. But Hopper's got a plan and he uses fire because he knows that fire affects the Demogorgons. So they use the fire and they end up escaping, and everything seems to be going alright just there. 11 is still doing the flashbacks to find out what went on in her past, and she's getting on with her mentor, which is Pete, I think his name is. He's showing her loads of things to do and how to embrace her powers, but she's still not got really any powers that are going on, and the other guys are still picking on her. Pete tells her, we need to break out of here, you need to break out because you're all powerful. She's like, okay, I'll do that, and as they're about to break out, he says, I can't go because I've got this thing in my neck. So she goes, oh, I'll save you, I'll help you, gets this thing up his neck, and then we find out that he is actually number one. She's 11, he's 1, he's the all-powerful one, and they have a fight together because he kills everybody else. So what she thought were her flashbacks of her killing everybody else, it was actually him, and she's like, no, we can't do this isn't right at all. And they have a bit of a mind fight, and then she batters him back, and that's what creates the Upside Down, because she sends him through like a portal, which turns him into Vecna. Exactly. So he turns into Vecna, she creates the Upside Down, or at least opens a portal to it, and that's where we get left. Oh my god. So that is the Stranger Things recap all the way up to the end of season 4, episode 7. 2 episodes left. I don't know if they're doing any more series after this. I hope they do, but the kids are getting old, so who knows. However, the story, the way they brought it all the way back to the first season, is brilliant. And that episode 4, the running up the hill with Max, best TV I've seen this year. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. Drop us a like, give us a comment, subscribe to the channel if that's your thing. And I'll see you all in the next one. Cheers, guys.
Yes, indeed. You better watch out.